My apologies. We're still missing two.
We are live.
Okay. We'll just give it another minute and then call to order. Nat, Councillor Harris?
Councillor Morales is having some tech difficulties, but I'm sure he's texting Wendy. Councillor Morales said someone just needs to let him in.
I suppose. And we're short one other member. Have we heard from him?
Councillor Jim Harris is supposed to be attending.
It might be important that maybe we give Jim a little time, Mayor Lehman. I think he's got an amendment.
Yeah, we can certainly hold the item for him, but I do want to make sure he's here for that train, historic train item for sure. Yep.
I have, another message to share. Someone said that through the Rogers TV, you can also hear the Owen Sound Council meeting on top of ours, FYI.
I wonder if that's better or worse. I guess we'll find out since we're being quiet. Okay, I see Councillor Morales among the attendees. Hopefully we can get him into the panelists, and then we are just missing one more.
I've sent a message to Councillor Harris to see if he's having any difficulties getting in.
I'm
just
playing
calling
Hollywood Squares here. Yeah.
Messenger, Harris. Also via the Rogers, there is just the screen of Barrie City Council and none of us. And you can hear Owen sound, just so everybody knows.
Okay. I'm sure our staff can talk to Rogers about their feed and hopefully they can get that sorted out. In the meantime, how are we doing with Councillor Morales? If we tell him we didn't vote, we just acclaimed that he could join the meeting. Do you think that would work?
Yeah, sorry for the delay, guys. I had some problems here, but
No
all good
worries.
now.
First meeting jinx.
We're having problems with Councilor Morales' video, but we can allow him to speak while they work on it. Oh, he dropped off again.
All right. Councilor Morales, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I was.
Oh, great.
I never knew Zoom had purgatory. I never knew Zoom had purgatory.
All right. Well, notwithstanding the video difficulties, Councilor Morales, I think if it's all right with you, we'll get started. There we are. Good stuff. All
There we
right. Okay, everyone, I'll call the General Committee meeting to order. Sorry about the brief delay for tech. Welcome to our virtual General Committee meeting. We are still practicing physical distancing, so General Committee is participating tonight via video conference. Executive management, the city clerk are also here, and the senior leadership team who have reports on tonight's agenda will be available to answer questions. And I'll just dive right into the consent agenda. We're starting tonight with a number of economic development items and a few items placed by members of council. So we will start with the staff reports. And of course, if the item is not held tonight, there will be no further debate. The item is deemed to be approved on consent, and it will be considered at the next city council meeting, which will be next week. If the item is held, we will discuss it very shortly. So, as I mentioned, no deferred business as we're coming out of the summer break and into the fall sitting of council. The first staff report is with regards to the restoration and donation of the historic train engine 1531. Councillor Jim Harris.
Oh, please.
Held by Councillor Harris. The next item is a staff report to Tourism Barrie and the City of Barrie MAT collection agreement renewal.
Hold, please.
Held by Councillor Harvey. Next item is the implementation program for our tourism master plan. Councillor Kungle.
Hold, please.
Held by Councillor Kungle. Fourth and final staff report is the business plan status as of June 30th. Second quarter report. No holds on that one. That one will go consent. Okay. We have three items for discussion placed by members of council. The first is with regards to an agreement with Siva Creative for free website and promotional support for the anti-racism task force. It's placed by myself. No holds. That is approved. And with our great thanks to the donor, Siva Creative. Second item is an invitation for a presentation to Georgian College. That's placed by Deputy Mayor Ward. No holds. That is approved. Third item for discussion is an item regarding payday loan establishments along Dunlop Street.
Hold, please.
Held by Councillor Owen. Okay, thanks, members of General Committee. We will go back and start with the train station staff report. Councillor Jim Harris, you held the item.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I'd like to put the item on the floor as written, and I have an amendment.
Go ahead.
So the amendment would be that staff report ECD 004-21 concerning the restoration and donation of the historic train engine 1531 be referred back to staff in the economic and creative development to provide further information concerning a cost benefit analysis for locating the engine at the Allendale Station or the vicinity of the South Shore Center versus the County of Simcoe Museum, and to consult with Heritage Barrie and report back to General Committee prior to the 2023 budget and business plan. And I can speak to that.
You could, except it's a referral motion. So I would normally just call the question, but I will say, are there any questions of procedure around that? Is a referral motion back to staff describes for the reasons in the item. Okay, if we're clear on that, then I will just be calling the question. Those in favor of referring the item? I am as well. Opposed? Is anyone opposed? Okay, that one goes back to staff. Thanks, Councillor Harrison. Sometimes we deal with them quickly, and we will look forward to the further information that was in your referral motion when that one comes back to us at General Committee. Okay, the next item that was held was the Tourism Barrie and City of Barrie MAT collection agreement renewal. Councillor Gary Harvey, you held this item.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll put the matter on the floor as printed, and I too have an amendment, if I could, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Just to change the tail end of paragraph 1 to read, as outlined in the conditions of the legislation for a 4-year period expiring October 31st, 2025, subject to the approval of council. And I can speak to that.
Okay, so item was put on the floor as printed, and the amendment from Councillor Harvey would, and I assume it removes the option to extend. You're simply making it a fixed 4-year term. So no 3+1, it's just a fixed 4-year term.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. As this council's representative on the board, when I first read the proposal, it did cause me some concern for the long-term projections, especially as we try to get ourselves out of the pandemic that we're in. The organization's making some long-term marketing campaigns, strategies, and also significant technology upgrades. Tourism Barrie's investing in marketing campaigns to assist in the COVID recovery plans that require significant upfront costs and contractual agreements with third-party service providers that reach well beyond October 2021. Tourism Barrie is asking for a 4-year agreement for the following reasons that are outlined. And I know an earlier letter was submitted through Invest Barrie. Currently, they're working on two different projects for sport tourism. First one is hiring a consultant to assess the Saddle Arena, and also a $120,000 consultant to develop a sport tourism and sport event plan for the City of Barrie. Both of these projects will go well into 2023 when the MAT agreement, as originally proposed, would have come to an end. Tourism Barrie would also need to upgrade its website platforms in 2022 and 2023 because of changes in technology, which would be budgeted for well over $70,000 as they currently operate 5 different websites. The new website would be ready for the spring of 2023's tourism season. 2 years just isn't sufficient time to recoup the heavy investments of the 3 projects and any of the results of the investments to evaluate Tourism Barrie's performance. To fulfill the destination management responsibilities, Tourism Barrie requires heavy investments in technology in 2021 and 2022. And as earlier mentioned, with the Consultant fees, the Sadlin Arena expansion analysis is costing $30,000. Those recommendations would be expected to be coming forward sometime in September of this year. $90,000 to $100,000 is in consultant costs for sport tourism and sport event planning, again, for the city of Barrie for 2021 and 2022. Another $70,000 for the upgrades to the websites. And also too, most recently, we, at our previous meeting, passed moving forward with submitting for the Canadian curling briar, which could take place in March 2023 if we're successful. And again, Barrie Tourism is committed to $50,000 there. In addition to all the regular destination marketing and operational costs to run a destination marketing organization, to start to implement in partnership with the City of Barrie, the recommendation and implementing the recommendations in the Tourism Master Plan and Tourism Barrie's 3-year strategic plan, many of which require long-term planning, strategies, and investments. 3 years does not allow for Tourism Barrie to recoup the investment costs spent, given the MAT revenues remain 38% below 2019 levels, and the Tourism Barrie has to repay $60,000 of a small business loan that has kept the organization afloat during the economic downturn. Sport tourism is one of the recommendations in the Tourism Master Plan for growing the visitor economy, which also requires long-term planning, investments, and committee work to bring the Stat Pro reports recommended for the completion. Developing sport tourism plans for growth and investment require long-term planning. Working with community organizations to up their game, to organize more larger sporting events, takes dedication and partnership building. As well as the Stat Pro recommendations, it will also take several years of dedication from the Tourism Barrie's Sport Tourism Development Officer to bring all of these to fruition. Tourism Barrie staff needs the stability and security of a longer commitment from the organization to keep them motivated in their employment. As a destination marketing organization, Tourism Barrie will always require heavy investments in technology to keep up with the competition and the trends. For example, Tourism Barrie's website will take about a year to plan and work with suppliers and upgrade the launch right before the summer peak season. A 4-year MAT agreement will allow Tourism Barrie to invest in technology that takes years of planning and launching. Tourism Barrie experienced a 58% drop in revenue from 2019 levels due to COVID, and requires a few years for the tourism industry to recover to pre-COVID levels. A 4-year commitment will assist in keeping staff motivated to continue their employment with the organization. So many people have left the tourism industry, as other industries, due to the economic downturn. Our staff, unfortunately, they had to lay off one, and the current 3 staff that remain all took a 20% pay cut to be able to keep the organization afloat through these economic times. Tourism Barrie also made other significant cuts. And one member ended up taking a leave of absence for 4 months through the summer and is scheduled to return in the middle of September. With the crisis in the tourism industry, it's a challenge to motivate staff to stay working for Tourism Barrie when there's only a 3-year agreement, adding more reasons to look for other opportunities. And more recently too, we saw that the Tourism Toronto just recently signed a 10-year deal with the City of Toronto. Which then shows the dedication that some other municipalities are having with their local tourism board. We are legally obligated to share a minimum of 50% with a local tourism organization. And as a result, I would ask that council support me in moving forward with a 4-year deal opposed to a 3-year deal. Subject to that, I will answer any questions.
Thanks, Councillor Harvey. On the amendment, Councillor Aylwin and then Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, and thank you, Councillor Harvey. Great points about why it should be a 4-year agreement. I'm supportive, absolutely. I do have one question for staff about their recommendation for a 3-year agreement with the option to extend the further 1 year. In the staff report, section 29, staff speaks to that recommended 3-year agreement, but no rationale was given. So I'm wondering if there was a specific rationale behind the 3 years versus the 4 years, just to get that perspective as well.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Ms. Schlichter.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, through you to Councillor Aylwin. The rationale really just focused on alignment with the implementation plan with the tourism master plan, as well as Tourism Barrie's 3-year strategic plan, because we're in our infancy with tourism as a strategic priority, and with our master plan, we just wanted to align those timeframes if council wanted to come back and reconsider the opportunity, but we are happy to support council's direction.
Great, thanks for that answer. I will be supporting the amendment from Councillor Harvey. The tourism sector is going to be key as we recover from this economic crash. It's going to be a key economic driver. And I think a lot of people are going to want to be hopping on the GO train or in their car rather than an airplane and visiting Barrie. So let's do it.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Councillor Harvey, could you repeat everything you just said? That joke was a lot funnier if I went first, but I'm going to be supportive and for all the same reasons that Councillor Aylwin never repeated. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCann. Any further comments on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the amendment, please indicate. I am as well. That makes it unanimous. Thanks, Councillor Harvey. On the main motion as amended. Anything further? Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Are you and the rest of the members of council able to hear me? Yes. Okay, perfect. Just want to clarify. I just wanted to add a quick section. It's one paragraph, essentially just asking staff for a list of a formalized project list of downtown projects that could be funded from the city's 50% portion from this, and report back. And I can speak to that.
Okay, so that would be an amendment, Councillor Morales?
Correct.
Okay, I'd suggest maybe we just add, it's simpler to add that as a paragraph 4. That would be that staff, it would be to report back to General Committee with the list of projects to be funded by the city's share of the MAT that are in downtown Barrie. Is that that's the purpose?
Correct.
Or the wording you want? Okay, so that is paragraph 4. It's an amendment on the amendment. Go ahead, Councillor Morales.
Perfect. Thanks, Mayor Lehman. I guess the main thing of this is there's lots of things that draw people in for tourism, whether personal or business, to the city of Barrie. It's indisputable to say that the downtown core is the focus of that, whether it's leisure, whether it's the lake, whether it's personal enjoyment or businesses and dining. So obviously that money should be invested in the main aspect that's generating those tourism dollars. So I think it's prudent to get a list from staff that can say, look, these are capital projects that we'd recommend council invest in. And once we get that list, council can really make the decision and start continuing that momentum that's been built, not only now that Dunlop Street has been done for a good amount of time, the reconstruction, as well as Open Air Dunlop has re-engaged existing Barrie residents and even captured previous people who weren't engaged in Barrie, or even brought people from outside of Barrie. So it's I just want to essentially align, and then once council gets that list, we can have that discussion on what we want to see as an investment and what we don't want to see.
Okay, on the amendment, which would request that staff report back on the specific projects to be funded that are in downtown Barrie. Anything further on that amendment before I call the question? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the amendment? None are opposed. That carries as well. Thanks, Councillor Morales. On the main motion as amended, anything further? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor of the main motion as amended? And that is unanimous as well. Thank you, members of General Committee. That passes. And thank you to staff and to the staff at Tourism Barrie for the good work they continue to do to try and support recovery in that sector, and particularly to Ms. Schlichter and her staff for putting this together. And the next item is also tourism related. That is the master plan implementation piece. Of course, the master plan was presented earlier in the year, and this is the implementation program for it. Councillor Kungo, you held this item.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I'll table the item as presented on the agenda. I don't have an amendment. I have some questions of staff rather than wait to the end of the meeting that I thought were topical. First off, I'd like to compliment staff on the implementation plan. It's exciting to see how the strategy is laid out over the coming years. I wanted to ask through staff, be it Ms. Miller or perhaps Ms. Schlichter, a couple of questions around the relationship of the implementation of the plan to active transportation. And it begins with a couple of pieces. So really seeing a lot of identification around the drive to sports and the drive to destinations, the development of a sport committee. And excited to see some of that happening, I think more formally in 2023. Recent conversations with the Active Transportation Sustainability Committee have really looked at the work being done in the coming, I would say maybe year to 2 years, around how do we put ourselves forward as a city, as a walkable city. And so when I look at the implementation of the tourism master plan around destinations and areas to highlight across the city, my broader question is if staff could share how this plan will intersect or complement some of the work being done with Brett Graytrix around the Vision Zero, traffic calming, but also tie into active transportation and inform maybe some areas of focus that we need to pay attention to supporting walkable and wheelable routes to some of these destinations. Can staff speak high level to how implementation of the tourism plan intersects with the active transportation and transit plan?
Schlichter.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Through you to Councillor Kungle. There are a few strategic directions outlined in the master plan and the implementation that talk to infrastructure development and connection to experience outside of sort of the sport tourism, and look at the outdoor strategy, leveraging our assets around Go Train, our parks and trails. And all of that, I think, ties in nicely with the active transportation plan. We work very closely with our development team, and we'll be taking a look. Our tourism coordinator is literally in his first month. So he's in process of getting engaged and connected with all of our city departments and really starting to pull those connections together.
Thank you. And in follow-up, would you recommend whether or not this year is an appropriate timing, considering your onboarding of and the position of that staff member to present to the Active Transportation Sustainability Committee? Because I'm wondering about how could we leverage the strategy you've put in place and your implementation plan around what we might be able to do in the coming year or two through active transportation as a committee work plan. Some of those pieces that tie to active transportation I'm seeing fall into 2022, 2023, but wondering if it would be advantageous to have the conversations in the coming months. Or is that too soon?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Kungle, I think we would be more than happy to engage sooner rather than later. It gives us the opportunity to identify things at an early stage, and as we build out the implementation, to make sure that we're connecting the dots as we go along. So I think that could certainly happen in 2021.
That's great. Thank you. I wanted to appreciate where you were without putting too much pressure on you, but I think your strategy could actually help position us very well as to what we might want to focus on at the committee level. So my compliments to you and all those involved in the plan, and it helps us to kind of look at that from a bit more of a strategic perspective. So well done, and looking forward to seeing how we can help along the way and complement your strategy forward.
Thanks, Councillor Kungle. The item's been placed on the floor as printed. Are there any other comments on the item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question on it. Those in favor of the item as printed? None opposed? That is also unanimous. All right, and that completes the staff reports for tonight. We have one of the items for discussion that was held. That is item 8.3 regarding payday loan establishments along Dunlop Street. It's held by Councillor Morales, was placed by Councillor Morales, held by Councillor Elwin. Go ahead, Councillor Elwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I have an amendment that, so it's to amend the item for discussion 8.2 to read that staff in the Legislative and Court Services Department investigate the feasibility of licensing payday loan establishments under the General Business Licensing Bylaw to restrict the number and concentration of these businesses throughout the city and report back to General Committee. I can speak to that.
Okay, it's actually item 8.3, but yes,
thank you.
Staff. So the amendment would be to investigate the feasibility of licensing these types of establishments under the business licensing bylaw and restricting the number and concentration of the businesses throughout the city. Okay, Councillor Elwin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I first want to thank Councillor Morales for bringing this conversation to the council table. I think it's a really important one. And having talked with staff in both the Development Services Department and the Enforcement Services Department, this was the path forward for getting the results that we're looking for with these payday loan establishments. So these establishments, we know they provide loans with exorbitant interest rates, and often that disproportionately harms vulnerable people, and they tend to be clustered in lower income neighborhoods or neighborhoods where there may be more poverty. So it's a thing that I think we should be looking at to not only help vulnerable people, but also in terms of economic development. It's an important piece. These establishments don't add much to a neighborhood or to our downtown. So from an economic development perspective, I think it's time that we put some restrictions in place here. So the provincial government granted municipalities the power to restrict payday loan establishments in 2018, and a number of municipalities have done so. So some municipalities limit these establishments to one per ward, for example. And that's just through, they limit the number of licenses they give out to these payday loan establishments. So that's the type of thing that I'm hoping staff can come back with. They can look at some of the best practices from other municipalities and come back with some suggestions for us on how we can best do this under the business licensing bylaw. The original motion, which spoke to the zoning bylaw, we do have provisions already in our zoning bylaw around separation distance in the downtown. So there's a minimum separation distance for payday loan establishments. And our Director of Development Services said that there are no other land use planning rationales for restricting this type of business. So while we are using the zoning bylaw as our current tool, we have another tool available to us, and that's the business licensing bylaw. So I'm hoping that we can bring it all together and solve this issue together.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Elwin. The amendment is on the floor. Does anyone wish to speak to it? Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Maybe just to Councillor Morales, the mover, the existing establishments. I didn't see anything written about them. If this does pass, what happens to the existing establishments?
Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. The intent of my motion is not to do anything to the existing establishments. Like, it's not about shutting businesses down. This is simply about the fact that right now on Dunlop Street, I believe there is only one payday loan place left. One shut down closer to the 5 Points, actually on Dunlop. There is one just a couple rock throws away from 5. So my intention is to just allow there to be a concentration and a sustain of long-term business, especially in the West End, And that is now the time to do this when they're not prevalent on Dunlop Street. The discussion, the intent that Councillor Alwyn is trying to have with this amendment is zero to do with my amendment. My concerns with this amendment is that any staff report that would come back to us, I obviously can't guarantee how quickly it would come back, but I would, my ask isn't very big, and I would hope that it would come back somewhat quick. In terms of asking staff to review provincial powers and look into a citywide system, would have the very unfortunate effect of delaying just the simple ask that I ask. So my intent, to clarify your question, Councillor McCann, my intent is not to shut down any businesses that are there. It is solely focused on Dunlop Street and the frontage on Dunlop Street. I appreciate some members of council willing to have a bigger discussion about the morality and the practice and citywide implementation. That is not the goal with my item for discussion.
Thank you for the clarification, Councillor. I'll be supporting you.
Okay, yeah, I would just note the Putting Consumers First Act, which is the piece of provincial legislation that delegated municipality or gave us as municipalities additional powers, and that's what Hamilton famously, I think Kingston, Ottawa, a bunch of others have used. There is a grandfather clause in there, so it does not affect existing establishments. Just to be clear, we do not have the power to do that. The specific legislation was created. I mean, they did other things like reducing the fees. I think the Ontario government set the fees during that piece of legislation. But in terms of the powers we as municipalities have, it's about how the industry grows in the future in our cities. Okay, so Councillor Aylwin's amendment is what we're discussing at the moment, which is to do it through business licensing citywide rather than the focus on Dunlop Street through a zoning amendment. Councillor Thompson on the amendment.
Thanks, Mayor Lehman. To other the amendment or the mover, whoever's more comfortable answering, do you feel that there's been an influx of applications as the chair of the BIA has said there's only one left on Dunlop? Have we got some sense that we're seeing a lot more of them opening up throughout the city, and that's the intention here to curtail them before it gets out of hand?
Well, since we're on the amendment, I guess I'll start with the mover of the amendment, and then maybe Councillor Morales can give his perspective, since you sort of addressed that to both of them. Councillor Thompson, go ahead, Councillor Owen.
Thanks, Mayor Lehman, and thank you, Councillor Thompson. Like Councillor Morales said, since there is only one existing downtown, this is the time where we should be looking at it. Like, what do we want the future of this industry in our city to look like? I'm not sure if there are other applications in, but there very well could be in the future, and I think we should be prepared for that. I would hate to see a situation where you have them clustered in a certain neighborhood. And I think that's why we should be taking that advanced look to say, hey, this is where we want you to be if you are going to be in our city, just to make sure we create good neighborhoods.
Councillor Morales?
Oh,
sorry. We'll just go to Sergio on that.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. The answer is no, Councillor Thompson. If anything, there's been a decrease. Just to clarify, there's one left on Dunlop, or two in the downtown core. And if we consider the downtown to extend all the way to the 400, there might likely actually be three. So I want to clarify the numbers, because numbers are important. There might be one for now at that plaza near Hart Drive. So to clarify, one on Dunlop, one at 5 Points, but not on Dunlop Street. They are not my intent whatsoever. And then one further down to the highway. I am not aware of any influx of applications, and I purposely kept my amendment tight with the wording, and my intent is Dunlop Street, the frontage of Dunlop Street.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lehman. Nothing further.
Okay, any other comments on the amendment? Councillor Harvey, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will support this. I actually like the direction of the amendment, because I think this is not just a Dunlop downtown issue, and this is definitely a broader issue. We all have areas in our wards that are of all different socioeconomic levels. where these particular types of storefronts, along with the rent-to-owns, specifically target those middle to low income earners. And I think we definitely need to have a good look at this and let staff come back with some recommendations, because the less we have of these in our neighborhoods, I think the better off all of our neighborhoods will be. The last thing we want to see is a bunch of these clustered in any one of our wards. And I don't know that any of our wards probably don't have at least one, if not two of these establishments. So it's definitely a positive lens for our staff to be looking at this.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. So as I've kind of expressed through the last two questions that I got, I just want to clarify for members of council, as specifically all members of council, but specifically anybody who is just supportive of the amendment. My intent is to give Dunlop Street, essentially let's call it Main Street, a fighting chance at re-emerging from COVID. There's lots of empty storefronts, good businesses that can go in there. We've got a new road, we've got new pipes, we've got a better streetscape. And this also is intended to benefit all of Dunlop Street, east or west end, but specifically give the west end a fighting chance. Give people a reason to go to the west end and stay in the west end. There's a couple of businesses that are really trying. Some have been trying for decades in the west end, and some are new. But we need to create that critical mass. The discussion about the morality of these businesses, whether it should be the feds, the province, us looking at legislation, members of council, I'm not trying to have the discussion now. If another member of council wants to have the discussion, please move it, put it on the table. Let's have the discussion separately. This is supposed to be very simple, a very incremental thing for our West End that I want it to move quickly. Okay. That using Municipal Act and provincial powers to have a significant change or alteration to an entire industry is a much slower process. So, because I always have to use an analogy, think of it this way. If you're a member of council, if you move at an item for discussion to restrict parking on 123 Main Street in your ward on a bend because of a blind spot, can you imagine if somebody else, if I stepped in and I tried to amend your item for discussion to for staff to review on-street parking for the entire city of Barrie and to create a parking pass for on-street parking? It could be a great idea, but it's a whole different thing than you just wanting to restrict parking on that one bend for whatever reason you do. So I am, to those that have expressed and to those that are thinking that they could be supportive of this amendment, that is great. Let's have the discussion separately. I want this, my intent is for this item for discussion to remain as is. The focus is on Dunlop Street. The focus is not on an industry ban or curtail. The focus is on our staff looking into either zoning or licensing reasons specifically for Dunlop Street. And knowing how many items for discussions we've placed, how much staff reports are outstanding, and knowing the time left in our council term, I kept this simple on purpose. And I wanted to come back specifically for Dunlop Street in a timely manner.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Morales. I saw Councillor Aylwin and then Councillor Natalie Harris. Then Councillor Reedman.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And thank you, Councillor Morales, for explaining your intent behind the item for discussion. Absolutely, I understand that. So a couple things. First, I introduced an amendment to look at the whole city, yes, which I understand you disagree with. So I would welcome an amendment to scrap that, where you can oppose it, that's fine. But the second part of my amendment is to look at the business licensing bylaw. Your item for discussion talks about the zoning bylaw. We have the answer already on your item for discussion as written. We've used the tools that are available for us in the zoning bylaw, and it's the minimum separation distance. And our Director of Development Services has said there's no land use planning rationale to further restrict them. We have another tool available to us, and that's the business licensing bylaw. So that's what my amendment speaks to. So I would suggest, if you're looking at just wanting to look at Dunlop Street, we could even split my amendment if you wanted to, but the business licensing piece, I think, to achieve the goals that you speak of, should be in there.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Next, I have Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Yeah, I was actually going to maybe suggest what Councillor Irwin said. I think both have a lot of merit, but I also do value what Councillor Morales is saying, that we could have this separate and it's a lot more fast. And then Councillor Aylwin's maybe new item would be able to look at something further with a different bylaw. I like them both, so I don't want to, I don't know, this is kind of, if we could make them two separate things, that would be great.
Thanks, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Riepma, I'll come to you next. I just want to ask a question of staff on process and timing, maybe, so we can get the information for General Committee. Ms. Banfield, if you're on the call, or Ms. Miller. Ms. Banfield's here. Good. Okay. Ms. Banfield, when are you anticipating the updated zoning bylaw being presented to Planning Committee?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Lehman. The zoning bylaw, the entire parent zoning bylaw won't be presented to council till at least the early part of 2022. We'll be wanting to get the official plan through and ultimately the zoning bylaw is supposed to implement the official plan. So the comprehensive bylaw won't be back, as I said, until 2022.
Okay. And while you're on the call, I guess I'd just like you to clarify, you know, maybe the bigger issue is the item as originally placed would restrict payday loan establishments on one street in particular. And we do already, of course, have the minimum distance separation or distance separation. So can you comment as to whether you can restrict an establishment on a single street?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, thank you for the question. And no, I think the best way, there is a separation distance, and restricting it, this particular use on one street is something from a planning, professional planning opinion, it would be difficult to bring forward to council.
Okay, so if we can't do it through the zoning bylaw, through the business licensing bylaw, I'm aware that other municipalities, such as Hamilton, have limited the total number in their municipality to roughly the existing ones. There have been geographic limits that said one per ward. I think, I'm not sure who raised that, but I believe that's the way several cities have approached it. The net effect of that might end up being being the same. You know, if we're limited to the ones that are in play right now, you can't have any additional ones. If we are only permitting a few additional ones, then, you know, I suppose there's a chance you could get a second one on Dunlop Street. But the issue here is really the authority to do this is not enabled by the Planning Act. It's enabled by this specific legislation that was passed regarding payday loan establishments. So I guess, Ms. Banfield, the question in that is, if and I don't know, you may have to pass this to someone else, but if it was limited through business licensing, can geography be part of that in terms of continuing to disperse these types of establishments? Members of General Committee seem to be concerned about them clustering, and we certainly had that concern when we did the minimum distance separation some time ago. So can geographic considerations like clustering be part of that under the business licensing approach?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, we could take a look at the separation distance. I mean, right now we have it as 100 meters in the zoning bylaw. That could be explored as we report back to staff. And then it's my understanding that the clerk looked into what we could restrict in terms of the licensing bylaw specifically.
Okay. So just to clarify again, the first thing I asked was about the timing. As it stands right now, the zoning bylaw, we might see in early 2022. If the second item or if the amendment passes, any sense, Madam Clerk, I guess it's legislative in court, so I'll ask you roughly what timing council would get the report?
Through Mayor Lehman to members of council, we could try and get it before the end of the year. We currently do license payday loan places if there's a pawn shop attached to them. So we could probably establish something relatively quickly, I guess. But I would have to evaluate it in with respect to the other reports that we have been requested to do as a department. But if we already have it as part of the licensing bylaw, we could probably get it turned around before the end of the year.
Okay, all for your consideration, members of General Committee. I'll go back to you, Councillor Riekma.
Thank you, Your Worship. And actually, you asked the two questions that I wanted to ask. And it sounds to me that if we go by way of zoning, we won't get there until sometime in early 2022. And if we go by way of the licensing bylaw, we'll get there probably by the end of this year. I think that makes perfect sense. I think the other thing that I've heard as well is that zoning is not a particularly helpful tool. It's a pretty blunt instrument, and so and I think that's a fair assessment. I think it's hard to justify, and I understand what Councilor Morales is trying to do, and I do agree with where his sentiment. I'm just thinking that the amendment is probably a more effective way to achieve what he's looking to do. So I'm going to support the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else on the amendment before I call the question? Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. To Ms. Banting, who we still have on the call. There were some really good questions about our ability to address this through our zoning bylaws. So right now we have a minimum setback. We have, people, there's minimum setbacks for nightclubs, other establishments, and now we're looking at payday loans. So right now, just to clarify, I believe the minimum setback is 100 meters. Is that correct, Ms. Banting?
I think you mean Ms. Banfield. Yes, Ms. Banfield, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Morales, correct. Right now, there is a 100-meter setback between tattoo parlors, payday loans, and a couple of those uses. Yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. So hearing the discussion that it's a little bit tough to, from a zoning perspective, to just say Dunlop Street only, because that was my intent, and I want to bring us back to always my intent. But I'm appreciating hearing other people's perspectives and passion on this. So if we can't do just Dunlop Street itself, is it within council's ability to increase that minimum setback to a number much higher than 100 meters? Is that possible, Ms. Banfield?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Morales, council could look at that separation distance. Yes, they could.
Okay, perfect. So is there a cap, a limit that minimum setback, minimum distance can be?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Morales, just to clarify, so because this 100 meters is in the zoning bylaw, an amendment to that 100 meters would have to follow the normal planning process of a public meeting and feedback and planning rationale. So absolutely, if council wanted us to take a look at that, staff could hold a public consultation and could look at a number, if you will, that might be greater than 100 meters.
So just to clarify my question, there's no, is there a limit to the distance, the minimum distance that could be altered, or that can be required?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Morales, I don't believe there's a number. Like anything that council would consider, it would have to kind of meet the tests of the Planning Act and all those sorts of things in terms of what's appropriate and what can be supported and the planning rationale. So I wouldn't say there's a number per se off the top of my head, but it would, presenting something to council would have to be backed by strong planning rationale.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Ms. Banfield. So based on those answers, members of council, my intent of addressing the Dunlop Street frontage can still be achieved with the item for discussion as printed. The wording might need, I tried to clarify obviously with staff just now to making sure the wording allows them, the department, the leeway to consider a significant increase in minimum distance requirement. And that might be, since we have one at 5 points, we have one on Dunlop, and we have them closer to the highway, that number might not, obviously it's not 100 meters, that might be a kilometer, that might be a kilometer and a half, still achieving the same purpose without getting into a process of caps in different wards. So as a result of what I'm hearing, I guess this is a question to Ms. Cook and likely Mayor Lehman. Is it possible that we can separate these two things? They're different discussions. And obviously me putting this, I had one intent with this, and I know obviously Councillor Alwyn is passionate about, and I'm hearing from other members of council about a more comprehensive approach. Can we essentially address one, zoning minimum distances, or having the department look at minimum distances for the downtown core, the proper planning term, like the UGD, I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, and then have a separate one that we can vote on if Councillor Alwyn moves it separately, where we're looking at throughout other areas in the city. Is that something that we can separate to streamline this, Ms. Cook or Mayor Lehman?
Well, I'm going to throw out a suggestion there, Councillor Morales. I think if your intent is maybe to use the tool that we can use, the minimum distance separation, our staff can advise on whether or not there's a rationale to justify limiting business establishments. I mean, they're legal businesses. We all have concerns with them, but we have to remain within our legal authority and have a rationale behind what we're doing. So my thought would be that in the wording of Councillor Aylwin's amendment, and you could move this as an amendment to the amendment, Councillor Morales, we could say that after the words general business licensing bylaw, which is Councillor Aylwin's preferred approach, we could say comma and minimum minimum separation distances under the zoning bylaw. Add that as a clause before the words that say to restrict the number and concentration of these businesses throughout the city. So what that would accomplish would be to obviously look at that tool as well. Staff could recommend doing something in the downtown using that rationale, because it's only in place in the downtown. But it eliminates the reference to one particular street, which isn't something we're allowed to do under the Planning Act. So that would be my thought. I offer that by way of suggestion. I don't know, Madam Clerk, did you have another suggestion or approach?
Through you, Mayor. Nope, that's a pretty good approach, and that was sorry, that's what I was going to suggest.
So Mayor Lehman, what you're essentially saying is staff would come back and say option A, option B.
Yeah.
Or like options under two different classifications or two different directions.
Yeah, well, and now we're asking them to do something that we do know we can do, which is increase, for example, the separation distance. If I might offer a brief comment, I'd be supportive of that, because I think we need to update some of the list of uses that we've got under minimum separation distances. I am really not sure why tattoo parlors were in there to begin with, but back in the day they were. And either way, I think that could use some updating. So it might address that issue at the same time.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Councillor Alwyn, is that do you want to just, Mayor Lehman, procedurally, can Councillor Alwyn just alter his own amendment, or since he's already
that could be a friendly, we're at general. If he doesn't want to, then you could place it as an amendment. We can debate it and vote on it.
I'm just not 100% sure on the wording, so I think if you just introduce it as an amendment, that would be better.
Okay, Councillor Morales.
So would we be altering, Mayor Lehman, would we be altering the language from, or essentially the entire item for discussion, from payday loans to payday loans, tattoo parlors, and other uses?
Yeah, you know what, to be fair, Councillor Morales, I say that, but I kind of threw that in there, and it's going to complicate things further. So, you know, regardless of the nods I saw around that comment, please ignore it. I'd suggest just leaving it to the item that's on the floor, the issue that's on the floor today. So my suggested approach, and it's just a suggestion, Councillor Morales, you can do what you'd like, of course, would be to add a clause after the words business licensing bylaw that says, and minimum separation distances under the zoning bylaw, and then the rest of the item that says to restrict the number and concentration of these businesses, because we use the MSDs, the separation distances, to reduce concentration. That's the zoning tool.
No, this is a really healthy discussion. I said I wanted to keep it simple, and your point about a comprehensive change is important. For example, again, tattoo parlors have evolved throughout the decades. There's another use that's been introduced now, which are essentially legalized cannabis shops, right? Some people have no concern with them. Some people say, okay, welcome to our core, but please don't all be together. So is this something we should even capture there? Is this counterintuitive to me saying I want this to go simply? Yes, absolutely. I'll address it right away. But is it fair to the evolving industry that we capture that change, especially when doing a new OP? Possibly. So,
well, let me throw us, if I might, sorry to interrupt you, Sergio, but I've thought on procedure, which would be we do keep things at least limited to the payday loan item, which is what was on the floor. But at council, anyone could introduce an amendment that also asks our staff and planning services while they're doing this to look at the list of uses under minimum separation distance. But, you know, then we're not getting into that tonight. Maybe we can get a bit more information about that and also licensing other, or at least limiting other uses, and do that at council. In the interest always of trying to keep things a little bit simpler, I agree with you. Let's focus on payday loans. And then if somebody wants to bring forward an amendment to this item before it passes Monday night next week, it gives us the week to properly prepare the amendment and introduce it.
Thank you, Mary Lehman. Let me ask a question to Ms. Banfield. Ms. Banfield, procedurally between general committee now and council, would it be easier if we just said for staff to look at the minimum distance setbacks for existing businesses and any businesses that have evolved in the economy the last time this was revised? Would that enable staff to do their job better? Because it is loose language that doesn't bind you to a specific direction and allows you to provide more of a comprehensive review? Or would vague language like that actually prohibit you from doing a specific job and addressing the concerns?
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Council Morales, the more clarity, the better that council can provide us. That would be very helpful.
Okay, perfect. So you know what, members of council, if this one gets shot down, there's no issues why we can't revise it. But I feel like there's not too many creative new uses that we've haven't really accounted for at this meeting. So I'll move an amendment as the mayor recommended, just adding in minimum distances specifically to payday loan places, tattoo parlors, and cannabis dispensaries in the downtown core. And I can speak to that amendment.
Okay, I am a little confused, Councillor Morales. So what would the amendment read?
Essentially, the amendment is the amendment you recommended, except minimum distances. I'm just getting more specifically about payday loan places, about tattoo parlors, and about cannabis dispensaries.
Right, but what's the direction to staff in the wording?
To review the minimum distance requirements. And the spirit of the amendment, sorry, that's it, and I can speak to it.
Sure. You know what, I'm just going to suggest to keep it simple. Now, because we are adding the second piece, let's make it a separate paragraph. I'd sort of said just throw in the word zoning bylaws so that they could, or minimum separation, but now that we're adding new uses. So my suggestion, Councilor Morales, again, suggestion, amendment to the amendment is to add a new paragraph 2 that staff review the current minimum separation distance provisions for certain uses in the downtown and report back as part of the same report. Does that accomplish what you're seeking?
I like the clarity of your separate paragraph, but when you said other uses, it was just a little bit generic. Can't we just say payday loan places, tattoo parlors, and cannabis dispensaries?
Yeah, well, I'll go to Ms. Banfield. What are the uses captured under minimum separation distances right now?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Lehman. It's tattoo parlors, body piercing parlors, pawn shops, and payday loan establishments.
Okay. So there's your 4 under the current zoning bylaw. So, okay, if we include that list, Councilor Morales, in the new paragraph 2. Okay. Are we clear on what Councillor Morales' amendment to the amendment would accomplish? He's asking for a review. Go ahead, Councillor Morales.
Yeah, one quick clarity on this. The intent to review all of those members of council is some of them, there obviously we're going to decide later, but there's obviously an intent that the minimum setback, at least from my end, be increased for payday loan providers. But as the mayor said, for other businesses, there's an opportunity to reduce it, right? Because tattoo, exactly. So some are going to go up, some are going to go down. This is a little bit more comprehensive, a little bit more fair, a little bit more just, and a little bit more complex. If anybody had any faith that I was going to move something simple, I'm sorry to break your hearts.
And the CAO's put his camera on, which usually means he's got something to say. I'll go to Mr. Prowse, and then I think I saw Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, and certainly not to put myself in the middle of the debate, but council has broadened this to the point where it basically is a zoning bylaw update, which staff have already indicated we are working on one, and there is no fast track for that. So I am a little concerned that council's expectations will not be met. Certainly, I can't speak to outcome, but certainly not by way of timeline, as it appears that we are getting direction to do a mini zoning bylaw update, and that will be problematic since we are actually doing a zoning bylaw update, as we've already communicated to council. So I just thought I would offer that context for council's consideration.
And actually, thanks for that, Mr. Prowse. I think the piece that I forgot when I was trying to come up with wording for Councillor Morales was that, of course, any zoning bylaw amendment's got to go through a public process, which is one of the reasons it takes a lot longer to do something through zoning. We do have a review underway, and Councillor Morales, if I might suggest, based on the CAO's comment, instead of my wording, which says as part of the same report, make it as part of the zoning bylaw review. So this directs staff to do that as part of the review that will come to us. That piece will take a little longer, but at least we aren't generating a whole new process. Thanks for that, CAO Prowse. Are you okay with that, Councillor Morales? Okay, so I think what we've workshopped on the floor here is a new paragraph 2, which would direct staff to review minimum separation distance for the 4 uses that are currently governed by that in the zoning bylaw as part of the current review. On that amendment, Councillor Morales, it's yours. Would you care to speak to it any further?
I think it speaks for itself at this point.
I hope so too. Does anyone else wish to speak to the amendment, the new paragraph 2? Well, then let's vote on it. Those in favor of the amendment to the amendment, please indicate. Anyone opposed? None. That carries. On the original amendment then, now as amended, which is basically Councillor Aylwin's paragraph 1, which is unamended, so it's as he introduced it with the new paragraph 2. Any further comments? Okay, I'll call the question. Those in favor? And no one is opposed. That carries also unanimously. Okay, we got there in the end. Thank you, everyone. And I believe that completes our items that were held tonight, which brings us to inquiries of staff. Members, well, let me start with the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor Ward, do you have any inquiries of staff? Any inquiries of staff, members of council? Councillor McCann, were you indicating? Oh, no, it was just your sign. All right. Any inquiries of staff? Okay, I actually do want to ask a few questions tonight about the second quarter report. I didn't hold it because I didn't intend to amend it. But these are hugely significant reports. It was the one staff report that went through on consent. And of course, these are these reports, how we report to the taxpayer on how every one of their dollars was spent. So I do have a few questions, and I'll ask the first one of the CAO. The report, I would direct anyone out there interested in how their tax dollars are spent and how things are going fiscally at the city to read those 23 pages. We are showing a surplus at the moment, but that is anticipated to normalize by year end to be roughly on budget. Certainly a lot better than we were doing at this time last year during the first months of the pandemic. But I did want to ask the CAO to comment on the second quarter results and where the corporation stands fiscally right now.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, for the question, and through you to members of council. I'll speak to it just very broadly. I think, as you noted, the report itself, which closes at the end of June, denotes a a tax supported surplus of approximately $4 million, but certainly does give the guidance that by year end, we do expect that to normalize. And we're not forecasting a large or significant surplus at the end of the year. And I don't think at this point we're forecasting a significant or large deficit. So that's the good news. The reality is these are certainly times full of ups and downs, even in the municipal world. And if council will lend their mind's eye back, because this report ends at the end of June, and you think about the volatility that was still going on in our economy and in our community and across the province and across Canada, certainly to close off the end of June with these remarkable results is a testament to the hard work and the dedication of the City of Barrie staff. This is just an incredible job of really leveraging our costs with our revenues as closely as possible. And that can be quite challenging. And while it seems like a simple concept, in the municipal sector, it is a challenge. And I can assure members of council that I every single week sit on calls with other municipalities across Ontario that may have finished last year with a significant deficit and may, as of June 30th, been reporting a further deficit in their numbers. And I won't name municipalities, but let me assure you that they exist and they are similar size to the City of Barrie. And they are not faring as well as we are. So I think that is a testament to council's leadership and a further testament to staff's dedication and their laser focus on making sure that we continue to set the community of Barrie apart from other municipalities. I would add to that, Mayor Lehman, that council over the last year or so has passed a number of measures to provide financial relief to our residents, to make things just a little bit more financially viable for them during these turbulent times. Those variances are also already in this report. So you will see that we have taken some revenue hits and some cost hits throughout the process, but the staff have continued to move and adjust our expectations and our financial formulas to make sure that we have stayed ahead of the game. And that has continued to support council's direction to continue to keep costs low for our residents, but at the same time, keep our core services intact. And in fact, as the report also notes, as we move into the second half of this year, we are expending some resources in areas that we know are important to the economy as we move into that recovery mode. So you'll see those expenditures, and that's why we're forecasting that we'll get back to basically a zero from a $4 million surplus at the end of June. Mayor Lehman.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, CIO Proust. And one area in particular, because it's been so strongly affected, is recreation. I don't know if you or Ms. McAlpine wish to speak to the work that's been done there. The report, as always, I mean, one of the changes we made to that report several years ago, and I think it's particularly effective, is it spells out the major variances. So where we're way ahead or way behind, or something has happened that's affected our budget significantly, it's spelled out in those boxes that are in that first appendix to the report. The rec one is it's sort of eye-popping, both in terms of the revenue reduction, which is something in the order of 80% drop. We're down, I think, 2.6 million in revenue. But then the work that's been done by staff to offset that in terms of reducing costs, has been very, very significant. And I know that this was just through June, right? So that's just the first half of the year. The second half of the year, hopefully we will be a little closer to normal because our facilities are now open. But Ms. McAlpine, I know you can't turn on a dime, but a lot of work was done to try and adapt. And it really shows, I think, in this quarter results. I mean, we're going to be operating fall programs, some degree of ice rentals and so forth. What are we looking at for the rest of the year? What are we forecasting for the rest of the year? And I guess the second part of that question is what's been done to date, and will we be continuing that to try and offset the cost impacts?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, for the question. There's a number of components to that. So in terms of what will we continue to do is we'll continue to review our expenditures. We have had significant savings in utilities from the facilities that were closed. We made some very difficult decisions related to our staffing levels and decreasing those to address the inability to provide in-person programs. And our recreation and culture team were very innovative and one of the first teams to develop virtual programming for fitness and other programs, and those will continue. So we will continue with the virtual programs. Right now, we have 7 of our 8 ice pads open, with the 8th one coming online. We have been able to slightly increase the capacity in our drop-in programs with some of the changes that came into place with the health restrictions for distancing of equipment, etc. And we'll continue to offer as many opportunities with variety as feasible, given the health restrictions, as recreation and culture play such an important role in the well-being of our community.
Thank you. And that's part of the reason for my question is hoping that as we continue to live through the pandemic, we're able to offer as much as we can in terms of our residents and for opportunities for fitness and socializing, even under the different circumstances that we're all getting used to. Related question, in the KPIs, which again, one of the best parts of this report is it gives all those measurements and metrics to say, how are we doing with your tax dollars? One of them that really caught my eye was the increase in rec access participation. So that's the credit towards rec programs for low-income residents. And it's up to almost 2,000 people. It was 1,500 last year. So in a year when everything else was cratering in terms of participation, that one did go up, and it might reflect some economic uncertainty. But what would you credit that particular piece to? Because that's actually really good news.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. And I would credit more of that to the economic downturn for some families, more of the families meeting the criteria for the rec access program that are participating at this time.
And that, I think, is the point. I was hoping that was the case, because really that is a form of relief. I mean, we didn't, or support better than relief. That we never really highlighted that, members of General Committee, over the last year, that one of the things we did try and do for our residents is, for those who don't have the funds to be able to participate, there is support. And so if you saw your income drop off during COVID, and you could qualify for that program, now you could. And we did see, in fact, 500 more people using our recreation programs and facilities because of that. So it was another way that the city almost unintentionally ended up supporting people through the COVID program, but for all good intentions that we set up the program in the first place. Last question is for Mr. Miller. And it's, I guess, two-part. It's about the assessment and the arrears. So, the top line revenue for the city is property tax revenue. How did we do in the first part of 2021 in terms of additions to the assessment base? Do we have a number for that? I don't think it is in the report or regularly reported.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, thanks for the question. The latest assessed roll, we have assessment growth of 1%, which is positive, but perhaps lower than what some may have thought. There is projection from MPAC that'll go up to about 1.25 to 1.3%. We'll see, and hopefully, I'm hoping it'll be a little bit higher than that. We did budget a higher number.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions, that will no doubt normalize it at year end. If construction activity is slower, then that number goes slower. But it's also about the timing that MPAC assesses and adds it to our rolls. I guess the related question was around arrears, which is whether people were paying their taxes or not, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, whatever. I was amazed to see in the KPIs that arrears are actually lower than forecast. Anything in that? Not by much. I think it's very close to the forecast, but that obviously is very good news, because one of the fears we had is that there would be a spike in arrears. Is there any story in that, Mr. Miller, through the first half of 21?
Through you, Mayor Lehman. So it's actually looking on par to sort of almost trend to what it was in 2019, which I'll call sort of a normal year. So it's positive, and as you suggest, maybe a bit surprising, but generally speaking, the people are paying their taxes. Some are taking advantage of the extended due dates by way council decided to waive the late penalties to the end of September, but I can only really describe it as positive. Unfortunately, we don't have it broken down by class, but it's overall a positive story, I think, for the community.
Okay. I did want to just raise this issue, first of all, because it's such a significant report, really shouldn't go by unaddressed, because this is how we report out to our residents on how tax dollars are spent. And as opposed to where we were this time last year, members of the General Committee, I think that, those answers really do speak to the work that's been done to try and adjust our cost base. Those were my inquiries. Councillor Harvey, did I see you indicate?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. This discussion actually reminded me of something that I wanted to follow up with, because I've had a few inquiries from some of my residents, and that's in regards to the water relief. I know the last time I reached out to staff through finance, I was told that it was going to be sometime this month that the program goes live. I was just wondering if there's any update as to when it's expected to go live, and what the procedure would be for a resident to apply for the program.
Mr. Miller.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Harvey. Thanks for the question, very timely. Just tomorrow, I'm going to be receiving an email to say that the program is up and running starting tomorrow. There's applications available online, and communications will be doing a broader announcement this week. So that is at this point we are going to be dealing with some processing of those requests sort of manually if there are changes to the bills. We're still working with our vendor to make some system changes, but we're well on our way to be able to handle any flows that come in. So I'll say as of tomorrow.
Great news. And actually in the email, if you wouldn't mind including a link to the application form, and that way I can just forward it to the residents that have been making some inquiries. Thanks a lot.
We'll do.
Thanks, Councillor Harvey. It's a timely question. Any other inquiries of staff? Okay, seeing none. Announcements. Deputy Mayor Ward, any announcements?
No announcements. Maybe just a reminder, a week from today is the federal election, reminding everybody to please get out and vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ward, for sure. I see a few signs. Councillor Aylwin, Harris, Morales, and Kunkel. Councillor Aylwin.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. So my first announcement is actually a shout out from a resident to our wonderful staff that I asked if I could share. So just a shout out to the amazing floral displays put forth by our city staff for the beautiful gardens, baskets, and planters throughout the city. They really did a great job. Thank you for everything they do. And that's from Robert and Valerie Cates, who live in Ward 2. So thanks to our wonderful staff for what you do. My second announcement is Barrie Public Library's online Comic Con is in full swing, and it runs until September 18th. There's quite a few cool events that you can attend virtually, and you can go to my website keenan.ca to find the link to that.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Yeah, certainly share the compliments to the folks, Mona Boyd and team, who handle the planting throughout the city. I have had compliments on the center medians. I've had compliments on the baskets. I've had compliments on the facilities, and a huge number of compliments on the waterfront, particularly the pink bridge, the plantings along the bridges. So just an incredible job that was done there this year. A little thing perhaps, but a huge thing in terms of both the amount of work and the number of people whose day it brightens up. So thank you to our staff for their amazing work there for sure. Councillor Natalie Harris.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Speaking of giving props to people who plant things, Councillor Kunkel, we can't not address this. You are amazing. Number one, you taught me how to plant, and I had tomatoes and they're amazing and everything. But I just encourage people to follow the Barrie Urban Gardeners and Councillor Kunkel's page, because you have harvested continuously just so many pounds of food and fresh vegetables for many different organizations around Barrie. And I know it's a passion that you have, but it is a lot of work. And so if we're saying props about planting in the city, props to Councillor Kungle. And my other last announcement is a thanks to Councillor McCann. I'm just thanking councillors, I guess, tonight, and also Councillor Morales. But on Thursday, we had, I was really fortunate to be part of the Downtown Foodie Experience. And this was an event where 3 groups of individuals had a competition, and they made some gourmet recipes and served it. Well, the servers actually were Councillor Morales, MPP Andrew Kanjan, MPP Downey, Ms. Banfield and Ms. Schlichter, and we served different meals all night, and it was an amazing time. And some of the other chefs were MP John Broussard. I can go on and on. It was a really great community event, and the point being that it raised $25,000 for the Love Barrie sign, and near and dear to my heart, it also raised $5,000 for the Salvation Army Tornado Relief Fund. So there was a lot of really great, amazing things that happened that night. The food looked delicious. It was a lot of fun, and we have some things, really great things to look forward to after that. So congratulations, Councillor McCann.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Next, I have Councillor Morales.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman and Councillor Natalie Harris. You stole one of the announcements from me, which I also wanted to give big kudos to Councillor Kungle. No, she's not the only one that gardens. So I want to take that away from Councillor Alwyn and Councillor Primo. You've been out there, but you definitely need to be recognized, Councillor Kungle. It's a culture shift. You put it on the radar, and the way I look at it is, if I'm allowed to say electric cars, you're allowed to say gardening, because it puts it on the radar, right? And it gets a discussion going, creates a culture, it gets people curious, and when you see that from the city's leadership, which we all collectively are, it brings people who might not otherwise have been engaged. So it's a big culture shift that, again, Councillor Natalie Harris put that, but I guess the only thing I wanted to add is thank you for, I guess, introducing that to the culture and putting it on the radar. My announcement I wanted to say was next week, and I've triple confirmed, and that guest speaker is Dr. Mike Moffat. For those that don't know, councillors and people watching in media, I'm going to be as daring as to say he is the lead authority in housing policy right now in Canada, specifically in Ontario. This is not just a pundit who just says something on the quick news for the soundbite. This is someone who looks at the data. He's a professor at the Ivy League School of Business at Western University, as well as a senior director of policy and innovation at the Smart Prosperity Institute in Ottawa. He knows his stuff. He can extrapolate, not guesses, not predictions. He can look at data and see supply that is being built in Ontario. And he doesn't stop there. He will do his analysis specifically to regions. He will dissect the KW region, the Guelph region, the London region, the Barrie and area region, and can bring forward some very valuable information about why our house prices are going up. So for anybody watching the meeting right now, you probably are loyal viewers right now at this time of the night. Invite 3 friends. Invite 3 friends to check out the next council meeting. Because a lot of people out there are not only being concerned about the rents, but also about to see if they themselves or their kids or grandkids can even entertain the idea of purchasing in Barrie again. So I invited Dr. Mike Moffat to speak to us a couple months ago because his insight is incredibly invaluable. And I think that politicians need to look at the data and make policy decisions that are not just going to look good, but move the needle substantially. And hopefully we can retain affordability in Barrie and start making good policy decisions. So anybody who's interested, Mike Moffat, Dr. Mike Moffat is scheduled to speak to council next week.
Thanks, Councillor Morales. Next, I have Councillor Kungle.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got about 4 updates. I'll try and be brief, but they're all time sensitive to this month. And I guess I'll start with one related to a harvest share to say thank you for the kind words And hopefully at some point in time, I can bring to council and the broader public the number of individuals that are doing really incredible things. So I'm in a privileged position and recognize that, where I might just get more attention on social media, but really it is an amazing, and I think, as some would say, culture shift around the dialogue with Barrie urban gardeners. And I have to say, on the note of staff, in addition to the beautiful gardens, if you haven't discovered how staff have very strategically, through Mona and the horticultural team, planted vegetables in the garden, take a peek, and I'll draw your attention as a public, because I mentioned this and people say, I was wondering if that was kale. So at the intersection of Duckworth and St. Vincent, while you'll see flowers in that city space, they've planted kale and tomatoes. We harvested. We didn't weigh it. I wish we could have, but we'll be doing another harvest. I'll let City Council know. But through the city and the team planting in public spaces, we harvested probably, and for a visual image, a garbage size bag, probably 12 of them. And they went to the women's shelter, the Salvation Army, and the food bank. So fresh food is being embraced and shared. And on that, please note September 25th, Living Green Barrie has a harvest share event. I'm sharing this publicly because they're asking the public, if you have apples that you grow on your own property and we want to reduce food waste, bring them to Sheer Park, check out the information on the Living Green website, and please look at donating your apples to a great cause, and more information there. But on September 25th at Sheer Park, that harvest share is about bringing your produce, specifically apples, to potentially a cider making display. My next note is wearing my City of Barrie Seniors Advisory Committee hat. I wanted to identify that there is a survey out right now by Community Connection 211 for individuals over 55. They are trying to get a great response rate. So please look at simcosurvey.ca. It takes about 10 minutes. They're looking for information from seniors across Simcoe County by September 30th. And this is really looking at information to identify opportunities to increase health, happiness, belonging, ideas seniors have across Simcoe County to help ensure older adults have a social network and to engage in community activities. So again, that's through www.simcosurvey.ca. And there is information there. If you don't have access online, please call Debbie 705-444-0040 and ask for the extension 246, and you'll find a way in which to participate in that survey. Next quick question, or I guess not question, but statement, is I had the lovely opportunity of meeting with Constable Kira Brooks from Barrie Police. Kira has the role of Community Safety and Wellbeing Officer. I learned this past week that there is a communities or citizens on patrol opportunity. So any resident that wants to get engaged as a volunteer with Citizens on Patrol, that's currently open and on the police website. That closes on September 24th, and there is an application process. So please take a look at that. I am excited about this opportunity because it also connects to a lot of ways in which we can have residents engaged and also being eyes and ears on the ground. So we also had a great conversation about the Pink Street app. So this is a sidebar announcement and promotion, because I'm still seeing a lot of residents aren't sure about how to maybe identify issues in the ward effectively, like graffiti. So I will be walking and biking my ward to finish up logging all the areas, because we have a significant number of tagging that's happened. But I invite residents, if you have the means by a cell phone or electronically, download the Ping Street app. It is free. You log yourself as a citizen of Barrie, a resident of Barrie, and then you've got access to all this information. But you can, in time, if you see something that needs to be corrected or repaired, you can actually take a photo and upload that directly to Service Barrie. So I'll ask for your help in Ward 3 to do that if you see something going on, but I'll be out and about trying to get all that logged so we can see some improvements, particularly on Livingston and Cundles with a mass amount of tagging on different utility boxes. The last one is the Monarch Ultra. So we've had the presentation from Carlotta and the team that are doing the run across well, for the most part of Ontario. They have a 21-day ultra run. It starts this September 19th in Peterborough. They are ending on October the 9th in Barrie. So I'm looking forward to meeting them in Victoria Harbour for the last leg. They'll then go through Midland, Penetang-Machine, Elmville, and Phelpston, ending around City Hall, outside where the flags are by the skating rink, around somewhere right now between 5 and 6 p.m. So we'll monitor that, but please stay tuned. There's a lot of information online, and we're hoping residents can engage in following them and also looking at cheering them on from a distance. So please take a look at that, and hoping to see a lot of individuals joining their movement. And this again is to bring education and awareness around the importance of pollinators and the plight of the monarch butterfly. And we're hoping to introduce them to some of our local environmental groups and not-for-profits and community agencies, and perhaps tour them through some gardens between the 9th and the 10th. So again, my compliments to Barrie Rotary on their strong partnership with them on making this run happen, and looking forward to seeing them running into Barrie on October the 9th. That is everything for my announcements.
All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Kungl. Back to you, Councillor Harris, Natalie Harris.
Really quick, embarrassingly, I forgot to mention Kelly McKenna, who is, I have to get it right, the executive director of the BIA. I meant to call her the president. And she was also a server at the foodie experience, and she had the best outfit, I must say. So Kelly, I'm sorry. I know you were there, and I love you, and I'm sorry I forgot you. There's so many people. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Any other announcements? Councillor McCann.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. I guess, I'll stick with the theme that we're thanking councillors. I just want to say that, and you held an item you put an item in discussion for the anti-racing task force. I just want to say that, Robert Thompson really reached out to Silva and really brought them in. So I wanted to give him a shout out, but also to recognize that RF Khan, a past councillor, is actually one of the partners in Silva with Mallory Steele. So I just thought that was a nice gesture for RF and for Mallory to donate to this website. That's all I want to say about that. Secondly, Natalie Harris, thank you very much for bringing up the Love Barrie competition, the Love Barrie foodie downtown foodie event. It was so much work. I mean, people only see sometimes, as we've all been in, events, and how much hard work goes into these events. And very different personalities. Sometimes they're work well together. Sometimes it's challenging. And at the end of the day, Philip Moore and Don Mucci, put together a fundraiser with very little help from me. And they said they want to be a part of the Love Barrie time because they just thought it was such a great landmark for the city of Barrie. And it was a fantastic event. I think most of the people out there were really looking just for a good time. And the Love Barrie sign was a secondary, but it went off without a hitch. We were down at Barrie's, probably, sexiest new nightclub down at Talkawally with some great new entrepreneurs that really are lighting the world on fire. And city staff, the MPs, MPPs, and of course, the two councillors that pitched in, Councillor Morales and Councillor Harris. Excuse me, you both were rock stars. You guys were great. And it was great being with some city staff members, as Natalie Harris suggested, Stephanie Slichter and Michelle Banfield. You guys really hustled, and I don't think I ever saw either one of you not working and serving that night. So I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I do have a little request from staff. Philip Moore, his father owns obviously Moore Packaging. And if any of you know Philip Moore, he doesn't do small things, he does everything big. And he actually, without maybe his father knowing, got the staff at Moore Packaging to make a life-size 8-foot tall, 20-foot cardboard Love Barrie sign, and it cost more packaging, like $5,000. So I said I would reach out to staff, and I'm reaching out to council. If anybody has a use for this 8-foot tall, 20-foot large sign that says Love Barrie, if we can find a use somewhere in a city facility, if we can find a use in the rotunda, if we can move it around. I know the offer was asked last week. I'm pretty sure it still stands. If staff could maybe reach out to me or Philip directly, and if you could use this Love Barrie sign somewhere, other than Sergio's basement, I think that would be a great addition. So I'll say no more tonight. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all for supporting. And the campaign just launched this week. And I've got to tell you, the amount of positivity that I'm getting from this campaign is absolutely fantastic. And Mayor Lehman, I understood that you had a conversation with Napoleon, and they said that you had mentioned some great things. So I really do appreciate your positivity towards it. And as I can't remember who I was talking to tonight, but they said it's Mike's sign. And I said, I stopped right there. This is our sign. This is the City of Barrie sign. We're a team here on council, and it'd be a great team project getting together. So I'll say no more. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor McCann. Any other announcements, members of General Committee? Okay, I do have a few because we haven't met for a little while, but gotta say, everyone, I'm appreciating the positivity tonight, the shout outs to staff and to each other. This is like the Ted Lasso of General Committee meetings. I'm enjoying this. Let's keep this going. And on that note, I did have the pleasure Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night to either volunteer or attend 4 different events in the city. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but Ripple of Kindness, a 5-year anniversary, almost $500,000 that 278 women have donated through that organization to Barrie Charities. The EMA and the South Asian Society of Simcoe County hosted a Bollywood movie night. And then the next night I was back at the same place, which is Mapleview Community Church, for Walk a Mile in Our Shoes, which was for the Women and Children Shelter. And Mapleview Community Church, I want to give a shout out to them because they were the venue, and these events were outside. They were different with COVID, but they, as huge supporters of the community, were the venue for these two particular items. And then Dancing with the Stars was on Sunday for Easter Seals. They've struggled for 2 years to be able to put this on. Credit to Charlene Mike for not giving up on raising money for the Easter Seals kids, and they managed to put on a reduced version, but a really important one that they were able to continue with that event on Sunday. It was nice to see in-person events done safely under the COVID restrictions, all outdoors or whether they were indoors with the COVID precautions, but all for great organizations benefiting these great causes in the community. And on that note, one more note about charity, and this is an announcement that I've been asked by the Community Foundation to make tonight. It's very significant, members of General Committee, and for those watching. The largest fund in Barrie's history for the Barrie Community Foundation was announced today. That is the new Central House Fund for Shelter Security. It is a permanent endowment of $1 million committed to 4 local organizations through the Barrie Community Foundation. Those are Camp Hill Communities, E. Fry, the Elizabeth Fry Society, Youth Haven, and the Samaritan House Community Ministries. They work with vulnerable community residents who traditionally face a lack of safe and permanent housing. And due to 43 years of continued good work by the Community Foundation, the board of the Central House Foundation, which is private philanthropy, has entrusted them to manage the annual long-term grant and provide those 4 organizations with annual disbursements from the endowment, which of course itself will continue to grow. This was a group of people that came together originally at Central United Church, 1977, for a number of organizations: Don Jay, Alan Bell, Lloyd Lawrence, Neil Donnelly, William Anderson, Alan Hopper, Doug Jaggs, Gordon McColgan, Terry Porter, and others put this group together in the 70s. And they have been quietly doing this work all those years in Barrie, and now have moved to the Barrie Community Foundation, of course, who hold endowments for philanthropists large and small, benefiting the library, David Busby Center, Friends of Copeland Forest, Rotary, Grove Park Home, RVH Gildas Club, Hospice Simcoe, Uplift Black, many other organizations in our community are funded from the Barrie Community Foundation. But this is a really big one, folks, $1 million endowment that will now continue to grow. Marshall Green, chair of the foundation, Sarah Ingram, executive director or acting executive director, and the rest of the board of directors. This is a tremendous accomplishment, and they will continue to grow this for our community. I wanted to note as well, the week of September 13th to September 19th is Terry Fox Week. And of course, 2021 is the 41st anniversary of the Terry Fox Run for Cancer. And I wanted to as well note, we are proclaiming September 16th as Take Back the Night Day in the city of Barrie. This is an internationally held day advocating for an end to violence against women and efforts to ensure women can live free from violence. We have also proclaimed this week as Battle of Britain Week in the city of Barrie. Just a few others for residents looking to plant a garden, back to urban gardening. And I certainly share all the kudos for the efforts of our gardeners here in Barrie, city and volunteer, and of course, Councillor Kungle. For residents looking to plant a garden at one of the city's community gardens, spaces are available at Bateau Park, 443 Mapleton, and Lampman Lane, 59 Lampman Lane. So those are newer community gardens, and there are spaces available for fall gardening. Business in the parks will continue until December 31st to try and offer another opportunity for people to grow their businesses outside through offering outdoor programs and activities. You can visit barrie.ca/COVID for more information if you're a business looking for that program. Finally, the textile curbside collection program, collecting used clothes, footwear, and linens, will be taking place during the week of September 27th to the 1st. And of course, we do have new collection bins throughout the city that you can use at any time as well, benefiting Cornerstone to Recovery. Okay, that is all of those lengthy announcements covering some past weeks and activities. And again, so many good activities by community and volunteer groups to report on tonight. Thanks, members of the General Committee. Last item is the circulation list. Comments on the circulation list. We'll start with August 12th circulation list. Okay, seeing nothing. August 19th. We did have a request to present there from the Simcoe Food Council. Did anyone want to move an item to allow them to present? Councillor Aylwin or Councillor Kungle? Councillor Aylwin, go ahead. Saw you first.
Absolutely. So procedurally, can I move that now,
I have an
or
item. Just ask staff to put an item on for next week to invite them.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so we'd refer that one to staff for the item. Thanks, Councillor Aylwin. August 26th. Any items from that one? Councillor Kungle.
Yes. Thanks. Sorry. Did I miss the September 13th?
Nope. Yet to come.
Yeah,
We're not there
sorry.
yet.
I'm
Okay.
early on.
August 26th. Anything from that one? Nope. September 2nd. Okay, seeing none. Go ahead, Councillor Kungle. September 13th tonight.
Sorry, thank you. I just was looking at circulation list, item A5, 210913 about culture days. And I did want to just hold it to be able to speak to it around giving that a bit of a highlight that moves from the 24th to September 24th to October 24th. And I didn't have an action for staff necessarily, but I wanted the opportunity if they wanted to comment on some of the activities, seeing as most will be virtual. And a big shout out to Amanda Dyke, who has been doing an incredible job around looking at opportunities to engage residents through culture days. I've had the privilege of connecting with the Barrie Arts Committee and Carol Ann Ryan in her new capacity with City of Barrie around culture days and beautification projects. So loving the direction the city is going in, but I guess I'll just open it up to identify if there's anything in particular that we can support around culture days as it goes virtual, or if there's any activities that we can help to showcase spotlights across the city, then just asking staff to see if there's anything in particular that you'd like us to focus on the 24th of September to the October 24th.
Okay, I'll go to Ms. Schlichter. Ms. Schlichter.
Thank you, Mayor Leemans, through you to Councillor Kungle, and thank you for the opportunity. We're very excited about Culture Days, wealth of activities, some opportunities to engage on public art walking tours. We have a wealth of projects that have come through this summer with our brightening barriers. So a great time to come downtown if you haven't already. a wealth of activations online, and there is a call out that will be coming out this week for organizations engaging in arts and culture, or who would like to present something over Culture Days. We'd like the opportunity to showcase that as well, because it takes a community to champion the program. So I would say keep an eye on the website, barrie.ca, Culture Days, and keep an eye out for the call for opportunities to participate.
Quick follow-up, if I may, Mayor Lehman.
Yep.
To you, Ms. Schlichter. In the memo, I noted a quick notation about honorarium. Is there anything there you can provide at this time about if there is a stipend or honorarium for individuals that come forward through that call for interest?
Thank you, Mayor Lehman, through to Council Kungl. There is a smaller honorarium as part of the programming to support some of that delivery. I would encourage anyone who is interested to reach out to our department directly.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Kungl. If there are no other comments on the circulation list, oh, go ahead, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor Lehman. Item A2, which was the always stop intersection of Owen Street and Wellington Street East. I did just want to ask a quick question of staff,
Sure.
if I could.
Go ahead. Yep.
So I'm not sure if it's Ms. Banfield or someone else, but so we conducted the investigation. The count of the vehicle count was completed on March 4th, 2021. And I remember council having a bit of a discussion around these types of investigations, traffic investigations during the pandemic. I'm having a hard time remembering where we landed on that, to be honest. But we were, I believe, Simcoe Muskoka was in the red zone at this time, so it's likely that traffic numbers aren't accurate compared to other years. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for us to take another look at this as we get back to quote unquote normal times.
Ms. Banfield.
Through you, Mayor Lehman, to Councillor Aylwin. I believe the council policy is to look at, not look at the same intersection within a 6-month period. And you're correct, we did raise this to council saying that traffic investigations right now are down. Council did want us to continue doing looking at these requests. And so we have, but absolutely we could kind of look at revisiting them in a 6-month period.
Okay, I will keep on top of that and consider moving something then, because this is particularly a troublesome intersection. I was actually surprised that there were only 2 reported collisions over the 3-year period, because I'm sure there were a couple more that weren't recorded. But I will deal with that. Thank you so much for answering the question. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Anything else on tonight's circulation list? Okay, if not, thanks, members of General Committee. Good meeting. This completes our agenda. We will be here for City Council next Monday. General Committee is, Finance Committee tomorrow night. See you for Finance and Corporate tomorrow night. City Council next Monday. General Committee is adjourned. Good night.